we're starting with introductions, what it means to be a B Corp, and the process. Just to reiterate for those of you who have joined, or if it wasn't clear from Matt already, if you have got questions, write them down or put them in the chat, and we'll cover those in the Q&A at the end. So my expectation is we'll probably present for 15 or 20 minutes or so, share as much as we know, and then we'll go into the questions. And obviously, the better the questions, the better that part of the session will be. So do post your questions. But it's always good to start with introductions. So Jon, do you want to introduce yourself and Nous briefly?
Absolutely. Firstly, thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I did a session with Tom a week or two ago over at ECS. I'm actually a director of 2 B Corps. We're only going to talk about one at the moment, which is Nous, where I'm a co-founder. We are 3 years old, and I always say it's my co-founder Greg's fault. There's a long version of the story. The short version of the story is that British Gas bought Greg's energy company, moved him onto an incorrect tariff, put up his prices, and it took him months and months to resolve the issue. And the insight there was that, firstly, a lot of these utility companies put their prices up without you looking. That's kind of their core skill. The loyalty tax, the loyalty penalty is real, but also that there was nothing out there to help you actually do this work. So Martin Lewis gives you lots of content, but there's no product that actually will do this work for you. And that is what we've built with Nous. So Nous is an AI-powered assistant that saves you time and money on your household bills. We started with this mission that we would make life simpler and fairer, put tech in the hands of the people rather than in the hands of the big companies. So we're a consumer champion business. We're a B Corp. We were a pending B Corp ever since we started. That is what we do. If you flip on to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about our employee offering. So the way that this actually starts when we offer the product via employers to their employees, is we start by helping people understand how much money they're overpaying on their bills. 9 out of 10 households overpay, often by many hundreds of pounds, nearly £1,000 across all their household bills. So we start with a session that helps people understand the gap, and then we kick in and we save money for them on their bills. And there are a number of companies there that on the slide that we've done this for. So that's me, and that's Nous.
Great. Well, Jon, I can say we had the session with our team last week, and there were quite a few of our team who definitely could save hundreds of pounds on their bills, myself included. So I can vouch for that as a customer now as well, which is great.
I should also say that I'm a customer. We're a customer of the electric car scheme.
Thanks for the shout out.
There we go.
So just, I guess for the rest of the group, I'll introduce myself briefly. I'm the gentleman on the left here, Thom Groot. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of the electric car scheme. And we've recently become a B Corp, which is why we thought it was good to set up this session together with Jon and Nous. And what we do is we try and make it simpler and more affordable for people to make a positive choice towards a net zero future, and trying to make those choices easier for people by removing kind of the key barriers. And with electric cars, I guess our belief is they are fundamentally as good, if not better, to drive than petrol and diesel cars, and obviously a lot better for the environment. But a lot of people are held back by the cost of the car. And we've developed, I guess, the electric car scheme to solve for that. And most of you will probably know that through a mechanism called salary sacrifice, we enable you and your employees to save 30 to 60% on the monthly cost of an electric car. And that's, I guess, what the electric car scheme does and what we're all about. But not what this session is about. This session is about becoming a B Corp, which is a journey we've been going through for the last 18 months. And I was very keen to cover, what does it mean to be a B Corp? What does the community look like? And then why it matters, which Jon will help us with. But then also talk through the process and what we learned through the process in case you are considering becoming a B Corp and going down this journey. So neither Jon or I work for B Corp, but we both believe in it. And the reason we believe in it quite strongly is the role of business in society and the role of business to be a force for good through the world of work. Now, what does it mean to be a B Corp? B Corp is relatively straightforward. It means that as a company, you commit to meeting high standards of social and environmental impact. So you're trying to do good in the world, particularly for society and for the environment, but also your employees. And that means you've got to do more than just say those things, but you've got to prove to an independent body, B Lab, that you're actually living those actions in real life as well. And so it's effectively a stamp of approval or a certification of that mission, and you have to do certain things to make sure that's enshrined in your company. And what B Corp do is they effectively go through an audit process to make sure that you meet those social and environmental standards that they set out, and they review that every 3 years and hold you accountable to that. So it is a relatively, I guess, high bar for social and environmental impact that you have to meet. And we felt that was very important because it aligns actually quite closely with our mission. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. I think one thing to note, which for me was a surprise when we went through the process, is just how small the community is. There are lots of great companies in the UK and abroad that are part of the B Corp community and believe in the same, I guess, fundamentals. So it's just over 8,000 companies worldwide, 1,500 or so companies in the UK. But that's actually less than 1% of companies in the UK that have signed up so far, which for me was a surprise, because I guess my belief was that there was a few more already involved. And what you can see on the page here is some of the great brands that are involved already. But you can find out more about other brands that are involved on the B Corp website if you're interested about finding more about the community. So Jon, I'm going to hand back to you to talk a bit more about why it matters and why did we do it, and yeah, just get your take on that, if that's okay.
Thanks, Tom. I don't know to whom I should attribute this quote, but it's something that stuck with me. I think it may have come from my days at business school, which are now nearly 20 years ago or so. But I think this is a really important thing to think about, you know, that actually it's all very well saying, oh yes, the government should force this and the government should mandate this, or, you know, wherever else. But actually, a lot of the time it's business that drives change. Businesses, I don't employ most of the people and drive most of the change. And, you know, to Tom's own journey with net zero, I think these things only really work when actually the products are good. The products are good enough, or even better. And as somebody who has 2 electric cars, I think those products are really good. And so for me, this is I think what the B Corp movement is about. It's a recognition that actually businesses have the power to affect change, and businesses will drive change. Businesses will be at the forefront of actually making whatever it is, the world a better place. You know, being better for the environment, being better in the way in which they treat people, being better in the ways in which we serve communities. So I do think it's important not to feel that you're powerless. And I think, you know, your company, I'm sure, can make a huge amount of difference to all of the communities in which it works, and you know, obviously that movement is now growing. If we flip onto the next one, yeah. So why is this important? I mean, for us, we're very much a mission-driven business, and we're very much trying to solve problems that, you know, you might argue are problems that could be solved by regulation. You know, so a lot of people would say, oh, the fact that utilities overcharge us is because regulation isn't good enough, and to a certain extent that's true. But we are trying to drive positive change. We're trying to, you know, make people's lives simpler and fairer. You know, and I think this is really important to hold us to account. So why does this work? It's not a perfect measure. You know, this is not perfect, but it is the best one that's out there. And of course, as it gains adoption, people actually understand what it means to have gone through the process and what it means that your company therefore does. You know, you cannot pass the test if you haven't thought about it. I think Tom had the stats last week. I think, you know, the scale goes up to 80 points where you have to pass, and you can score, I think, over 100 points. I think, Tom, you did score over 100 points, I believe, in your assessment.
We came out at just over 100, which was it was a good achievement. Very proud of. Yeah.
But the typical company that takes the test, you know, without having thought about being a B Corp, I think scores in the 50s. Just to give you a sort of feel for the dynamic. And so you have to be doing the right things, and you don't have to be doing everything right, but you have to be doing the right things across the way in which you treat your suppliers, the way in which you treat your communities, the way in which you treat your employees, and the way in which your sort of business mission contributes to the world. And so, you know, why do we do it? We do it to hold ourselves to account. We do it, of course, because it is a strong signal to employees that we are a mission-driven business. And I'm sure many of you will know that particularly younger employees are very motivated by mission-driven businesses. I think certainly there's something I noticed over the change in my sort of working lifetime is that employees, particularly younger ones, are very motivated to work for companies that are doing good. And as they should be. So it's very, very important for that. And of course, it's very important in terms of sales and marketing, because companies that are B Corps like to buy from B Corps, and companies that are interested in working with suppliers that do good will see the badge, and the badge does mean something. So that's why that was the journey for us. Tom, do you want to sort of chime in on your side of that?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, for us, it was just clear alignment between what B Corp stands for and what we stands for, which is trying to do good for the environment and for society, and I guess helping people. So we started to get into it probably about 2 years ago and get interested, and that was probably a year after we founded, because we hadn't seen it as necessarily a priority, because it was always like ingrained in us, like, look, we are here, we're trying to do something good, it's our mission. And it wasn't until probably a year in where we were like, oh, hold on, we should probably do this certification to make sure that people externally can also see that we walk the walk and not just talk the talk. But I would agree, definitely it helps in terms of engagement. Our team feels very passionate about it. In fact, it was employee driven. The process, and we've involved quite a few of the team in it. And I do see, especially in worlds where you're in a competitive market and there's maybe multiple suppliers, it does help with people choosing a partner in their journey. So for us, that's salary sacrifice for electric cars. For you, that's obviously supporting people and lowering their bills. But there are many other industries where people might benefit from this and boosting their profile from a sales and marketing perspective. Yeah, go on.
And I was going to say, I also think it's a good forcing mechanism for young businesses, in that. In order to score points on the employee section, you have to be doing good things for your employees, and those are things that are often, I think, easy to ignore for young businesses. Oh yes, we'll put those off. We'll do those things when we're profitable. We'll do those things when we've raised more money. We'll do those things when, and actually, it forces the discipline to say, no, we're going to do them now, and we're going to do them because they're important and they're the right things to do. And I think that for us was a very important forcing mechanism, especially since we were a pending B Corp when we started, and we always knew we wanted to do it. And we sort of almost had a clock, because the pending B Corp certification doesn't last for very long before you sort of have to then certify. So for us, it was a great forcing mechanism to kind of grow up as a company when we were very young.
Good. I'm going to talk briefly about, I guess, the process and how to become a B Corp and what is looked at. So I guess going through the process, there's kind of 3 clear mission statements from B Corp that you are assessed on and aligned to. One is around accountability, transparency, continuous improvement. The next one is the core mission, I guess, social, environmental impact. And then the third is, you really have to want to be a part of a global movement for inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economic system. And it's quite a long-winded way of saying, look, ultimately you've got to be in it for the long game. The B Corp team, or the B Labs team, I should say, who do the assessment, look at 5 areas. So that's kind of workers, which Jon touched on. Are you doing the right things for employees? So that's things like, are you paying a fair wage? What employee benefits and support mechanisms have you got in place for employees? And the environment, what's your impact on the environment, not just of your product, but also of your business, and do you really think about it? Say if you've got offices or you've got manufacturing capacities, well, how do you take the environment into account? Your customers, the impact you have on your customers, and how you support your customers in their societal and environmental goals, and how does that work? Local community, so that can be where you're based, but also just the broader community that you serve as a business. And then quite an important one is around governance. So is your business actually set up to deliver these goals and have good governance around that? So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But for example, does your board look at ESG metrics as part of the monthly board meeting? Does your management team really think about driving the maximum impact or not? And importantly, do you align your mission as a business with these environmental and societal goals, and not just profit in the way that it's set up and the constitutions of the business? So in terms of the process, the way that's laid out is effectively there's 7 steps. So first of all, you check, are you eligible to be a B Corp? Are you, in the appropriate industry? Pretty easy to do, and you'll be able to do this quite easy. Second is you pay a fee to B Labs to take you through that process, because there's actually quite a bit of work involved on their side. And then the more difficult work starts, which is the impact assessments, legal requirements, and the review process. That process, it might look very simple in terms of 3 steps on the page here. That for us was definitely the most challenging and time-consuming part of it. So if I talk about the assessment first, the assessment involves basically submitting a very large questionnaire, which goes through all the aspects that are assessed by the B Labs team. So as I said, employees, governance, workers, and community, and your customers. And you basically go through a long list of questions, provide answers, and effectively self-score yourself before you submit that assessment to B Corp for verification. That probably took us maybe 2-3 months to put together, because during that process, we also, like Jon said, identified areas where we could improve or could do something better, and actually try to implement that change as we filled out the questionnaire. And then I would say the B Corp kind of review process then also takes a long time, because once you've submitted that assessment, they will ask for evidence on your answers to your questions. They might not ask for evidence on every single question, but they'll ask for evidence on all the key ones that drive the score, and they'll go into quite a bit of depth for you to provide documentation, go through processes. You end up with a call with B Corp to talk through some of the questions they may have on your application and what you've submitted, to verify that what you've submitted is true. And that's step 5 in the process. That took us 9 months. So there was a fair bit of waiting, because B Corp are quite busy. So I think we had to wait 3 or 4 months once we got all the paperwork ready to start that process, just because they're busy assessing a fair few businesses around the world all the time. And then the process itself took 2 to 3 months, because there was a fair bit of back and forth. We took it section by section, and it really is very in-depth in terms of the review process. The other, I guess, key element for us, and it probably will be for you and your business as well, is the legal requirements. So B Corp rightly require that your mission, that your business constitution also aligns to B Corp, and that somewhere in your setup, you formally make the commitments to B Corp and what it stands for. And for us, that involved changing our what's called the Articles of Association, which I call the constitution of the business, and what we are, what's our mission, which we took a bit of time to draft, and then took a little bit of time to the legal process, including asking all of our shareholders for permission and approval to become a B Corp. And that process just took a little bit of time, not because it was incredibly difficult, but because we had to engage all of our shareholders and seek approval, which wasn't particularly challenging, because obviously they also believe in our mission, and that's what they've signed up to by being a shareholder in the electric car scheme, but can take some time just to put together. So start to finish, I'd say that took us about 3 months, which we did in parallel with putting the application together, which took us 6 months. So that, I would say, the first 2 steps, easy. The next 3 steps, quite time consuming and resource intensive, and probably end to end, if I recall, took us 15-16 months to get through all of that to the end. And at that point, you are approved as a B Corp, and then the impact reporting and the launch and joining the community is again relatively straightforward. So there's a couple of really I'd say great benefits in terms of the community. There's something called the B, I think it's called the B Hive, which I've been on, where it's basically an internal message board where you can connect with other B Corps and people exchange ideas and ask for recommendations. So actually the first time I went on there, I could already see some of our customers had been on there and talked about our company. It was quite interesting to read some of the comments and reviews and engage in that debate. And it is a very active community, which is great to be a part of. And in terms of yeah, go on, Jon.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say on the community, we have a number of partners who offer Nous to their employees who are part of the Beehive community, and actually we've had some sort of virality even within that group from people talking about us in that community. So it is an active community, and it's people who are sort of interested in other mission-driven businesses. The one thing I would add to Tom's story, done this, as I said, we wired everything in from the start. So we didn't have to change our articles because we had written them with B Corp in mind from the beginning. And a lot of the processes we didn't have to change. There were things we'd set up knowing what the B Corp standards were. As I said before, I've also been a director that's done of a business that's done this sort of 10 years into their life. And my advice would be, the earlier you can do this, the better. Don't leave it. The earlier you can do it, the easier it is to adapt and change processes and change things that you might need to change in order to meet the standards. But the later you do it in your company's life, the harder it gets. It isn't impossible, but for those of you who are part of growing businesses, don't put it off. Do it early, because it's great and it forces the discipline early, and it means there's sort of less things to change.
Good. I'm assuming there'll be a fair few questions around this, which people are posting in the chat and will have in their mind. So we'll definitely come back to some of this in the Q&A. But that's essentially the process. It is, as Jon said, it's time consuming. The earlier you can start it, the better. But it can also be done later in your company's life, and it just requires us, maybe in some places a little bit more effort or a different approach. So I think I was just going to finish on a couple of things on where to go if you want to find out more. Obviously, you found this webinar. You probably have questions. We'll go into that, and that's great. But if you if you want to find out more in more detail about ourselves, B Corp or Nous, I was just going to point you in the right direction. So for B Corp, it's pretty obvious. The UK website is a great place to go. There's loads of resources, and in particular, I found the certification guide quite useful. It's quite an in-depth document, so it's probably not the place to start if you just want to know high level what's going on. But if you want to get into the detail of the process and kind of what it feels like, that's a great place to start. And the link is bcorporation.uk. For the electric car scheme, I think most of you will already be aware of us and our website, but if not, it's www.electriccarscheme.com, and the easiest way to find out a bit more about the scheme is to book yourself into either a webinar or one-to-one demo with one of our team. So it's just the book a demo button. And Jon, I think it works very similar for Nous, but I'll let you talk that through.
Yeah, absolutely. Go to nous.co if you want to find the business area. It's nous.co/4-business. Or you can drop us an email at sales@nous.co. I should also add that you do actually get points for your B Corp assessment for offering our product to your staff, because we are something that helps employees with their cost of living. So that is worth flagging.
Very good. Well, I think that's sort of the formal part of the presentation and the key points we wanted to share with you. Matt, I'm kind of hoping that you will help us moderate this Q&A section, because I'm imagining there are a fair few questions. So you happy to do that?
I certainly am. So we'll start with the ones on the chat, which is actually a really good way of running this. So if you do have a question prepared, do feel free to put it in the chat. There's also a function at the bottom of the call with a hand on it, so you can raise your hand that way. With this amount of people on the call, it's fairly hard to manage it that way. So if you can put it in the chat, that we'll be very grateful. So let's get going. So first question is, what challenges might a business encounter during the process of getting the B Corp certification?
Oh, good question. In my experience, actually evidencing things that you do often can be quite difficult. So the other business that I'm involved with that went through this is a business that manufactures and did a sort of full supply chain audit in order to verify its environmental sustainability. And a lot of the evidencing can be quite complicated in that kind of realm, and it can also be quite complicated with things like HR processes. What we did is we built a lot of our HR infrastructure, if you will, in Notion, and we were able to sort of actually just expose a lot of the documentation that we'd already built already built to the B Lab assessors. So those are things that I've sort of seen that people find quite challenging when doing this.
Okay, thank you very much. So next question here is, our company is currently at stage 5, the review, has already conducted our review call. How much longer on average did it take your company to become certified after reaching this stage? I suppose we have kind of 2 examples here, so if you guys could each sort of give us a bit of info on those.
Yeah, I'll go first. So we had our review call after, I'd say, the initial wait for B Labs to engage, and I think post that call it probably took us another 2 to 3 months, because we had a really good call just to give an overview of the business, answer some initial questions. But then what the B Lab team do is basically the analyst there will review almost section by section and ask you to provide documentation. And there was probably about a week each time between they reviewed an element or a section, they asked questions. We then went away for a day or 2 just to gather all the documentation, go into Notion, go into our HR system, download the policies, all these things, resubmit it for them to review it, tick it off, and then move on to the next section. So for us, it was 2 to 3 months just to get through that section by section. John, I don't know if it was very different for you.
Far quicker. Ours was under a month. We exposed a very large amount of documentation straight up just because of the way we'd built it, and we didn't have very much backwards and forwards at all. So it was a few weeks.
Yeah. So it probably just depends on how much you put in the initial application, but anywhere between a few weeks and a few months is probably the timeline.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Next question from Lisa. So how many people were in your project team to deliver this?
I'll go first, John. For us, this was a great initiative to get the team involved on. So we had 3 people on the project team who all had full-time jobs, but were very passionate about leading on this and kind of worked a little bit extra to get us through that. So I don't think they're on the call, but I would like to shout them out: Ruby, Steph and Anna, who did a great job. So they did a lot of the application and the preparation, in their spare time. And then I did, as the CEO and the co-founder, I did quite a lot of the Q&A with B Corp. So obviously I reviewed everything they did and signed it off. So I was involved, and then did the backwards and forwards. But all 4 of us have full-time jobs. So it was a sort of, just a side mission, if you will, for us to go through this, because we're all very engaged and love doing it. John?
Really similar experience for us. 3 of us involved, so two folk and me as co-founder, sort of reviewing a lot of the documentation and output. All 3 of us with full-time other jobs, so very similar process.
Awesome, thank you guys. Okay, next question from Robin. We're a parent company with 2 subsidiaries, one fully owned and one 51% owned. Do we need to include the data/information for all 3 companies within the assessment? And should all 3 companies have the same policies, evidence, etc.?
You should take this, Tom, given you're a conglomerate yourselves.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it will depend a lot on your business setup and structure, and whether the businesses do different things or effectively are part of the same business doing the same things. We have our group structure is 3 entities, a holdings company and then 2 other companies. But the team involved and the mission of the group is effectively getting people to net zero. And most of what we do is the electric car scheme. And so the policies and the setup ends up being the same across the group. The B Corp or B Labs have a slightly different process for larger and more complex group structures. So we went into that process, they reviewed our structure, they looked at everything. For us, they decided, because it's all the same, they would simplify it back again and almost assess us as one company. But if you're a slightly bigger company and you might have a more complex group, so I'm thinking about some of my former employers who have many entities, many business lines, they probably will ask you to provide more documentation if there are differences between the different companies and the different setup. But they will assess that as you go through the process. But I would probably, from my interactions, I guess, with them, expect there'll be a slightly bigger ask if you've got companies doing very different things with very different policies. And what you may end up choosing to do, I've seen companies do this, is only apply for B Corp certification for one of the entities rather than all of the entities in the group if they are very different.
Thank you. Okay, next question from Plumman. How does B Corp certification influence consumer perception and behavior towards a company's products or services?
Yeah, happy to pick that one off. And I think you probably saw from the slide that Tom put put up earlier, that it is very prevalent amongst consumer-facing brands. And I think the reason that particularly a lot of modern consumer-facing brands do this is because a certain slice of consumers are very keyed into whether you're a B Corp or not. It's not pervasive, it's not the whole market, but there are definitely slices of customers who are asking, is this company good, before they consume? And I think that's equally as true in consumer minds as it is in some B2B purchases as well. So I think it definitely does influence. I think we certainly, as I said, have had companies come to us because we're a B Corp. It's obviously not the only reason, but it's clearly a factor in their minds. And hard to quantify, but only positive, in my view.
Yeah, I think, Matt, you will also have some experience in this. You know, we obviously work B2B and with small businesses, medium businesses, and very, very large businesses, where sometimes we're asked to fill out extensive RFQ and RFP documents. I'm sure some of you are familiar with those, and you do get asked about some of your credentials and certification. And now that we've able to say we're a B Corp, that definitely helps in those processes.
Yeah, absolutely, can testify to that. Cards on the table, guys, just for a bit of information. I actually lost a deal once to one of our competitors who was a B Corp and we weren't. So it really can have a huge effect on your B2B sales process. Luckily now we're a B Corp, so that won't happen ever again. Okay.
And they are no longer. There we go. Anyway, the next question, please.
Okay. So here we go. Oliver. So we absolutely believe in the principles, but we're worried that the paperwork and governance might slow down a growth company or prevent it from being as flexible as you would like to be. Do you have thoughts on that?
I've got some thoughts on that. I think the effort involved in the process is real, right? We had real people working on this, spending time on this. It took a long time, and you spend some money on it as well, right? So for us, it was the application fee, you pay a membership fee, and we needed some legal advice to change our constitution documents. So there were some costs involved in that side. Has it slowed us down in terms of growth? I would say no, because we are very much a mission-driven business. And so all of the B Corp, I guess, checks and balances align very much with what we do anyway. And I would say it's not stopped us from making any business decisions or decisions to improve the product or client experience at all. I think in terms of growth, actually, I'm hoping it will help us grow faster, because it's that, I guess, external stamp of approval on a relatively young and fast-growing business that not everyone knows or trusts yet. So I think it can actually help with growth rather than hinder growth. Jon?
I would have said something almost identical to Tom.
Okay, good stuff. Next question is from Mike from Top Cashback. So for Nous and ECS, you have a product which it seems to play a big part in gaining points for certification. Does this product play a big part in it, or is it mostly around how business is conducted?
I'm happy to jump in. I mean, we did our certification a little while ago, and we did it when our business was quite nascent, and actually we didn't end up relying on the points from our business model in order to gain certification. So I would say we probably would have got an even better score if we did it again now with more maturity in our business model. So I think it was everything. I mean, the environment was far smaller for us. We are a business that exists almost entirely digitally and not physically, so that some of the questions were sort of less relevant to us in that regard. But everything else, it was just across the board for us.
Yeah, and I think it was the same for us. I think we obviously scored more points because of our product and the impact it has on our clients, as well as our own business and our own team, who are all, quite a few of whom have got cast through the scheme. So it definitely helped. But I think quite a lot of the other sections are more. There's more points available, and I think if I think about Top Cashback, for example, as a business, as a large business, it also helps, similar to Nous, helps people. You have a lot of employees, and the way you, I guess, treat colleagues will be a big factor in the process. So it can help, but it's not a requirement.
Okay. So next question is from Andrew, and this is the last question on the list. So if anyone else does have one, please do pop it in there now. So we're kind of preloaded for the next one. So Andrew said, you mentioned your predetermination to become a B Corp, certified. Sorry, the new message has lost my place. So how did you bring people in your team with you? Were there any emotional or practical challenges along the way?
Yeah, I think this is probably aimed more at me. This is one of the joys of being a co-founder of a business. You know, when you start the business, you have long conversations and long debates about things that are important to you in how not just what your business is going to do, but how your business is going to do it. And so to a certain extent, those conversations were had before we even employed anybody else. And we all talked about how we had enjoyed, preferred, loved working in businesses that did good and actually, you know, walked the walk and didn't just talk the talk, which some companies do in this sort of area. So we were very much aligned as founders that this was something that was important to us. I think actually we were probably less aligned on B Corp as the sort of measuring stick. That was just more of a, well, this is the best thing that's out there to kind of prove it, and proving it is as important as doing it for us. And then from there, of course, it's embedded in your culture, at least it was for us. And so, you know, a lot of the people who work here because of their alignment with our values and our mission. That is very important to people who work here. Like, you know, we have a lot of engineers here. We manipulate a lot of data, and a lot of our engineers are very motivated by the idea that this is technology, you know, in the hands of the consumer and doing good, which is not always the way in which technology has been employed. So, no, I think it was quite easy to bring people along, both at the beginning and as we've hired people. Obviously, the practical challenges of doing the work and getting through the certification, because there's no such thing as a small project and there's real work, as Tom said. But you know, I think there was kind of emotional and ideological alignment in our business for doing it.
Cool. Thank you very much. Next questions from Trev. Only have medium influence on senior leadership on decisions. How can I influence and persuade the decision of predominantly bottom line driven management?
I mean, I'll give you my take on this, having worked for some larger businesses where that's the approach and other businesses where that was not the approach. I think ultimately you do have to have buy-in and support from senior leadership teams, especially if there is changes required in the setup or processes or meeting the legal requirements, for example. But I think the case can be made, one, this is good for growth and good for the business, and two, obviously this is very important in terms of employee engagement, talent attraction, and recruitment. And you know, you will have to engage people on that. Hopefully B Corp as a good standard will at least be recognized and people will engage on that. But yes, you will have to get I think buy-in from the top, otherwise it becomes very, very difficult, where a change may be needed to actually get that change implemented, and that can be more difficult in larger organizations in my experience, which means you need to make a good case and engage people along the way. John, would you agree? Or
I would agree with that. The only thing I would add is that there are larger organizations that have become B Corps, and so it is possible. And my advice would be to get more involved in the B Corp community and find those larger organizations and talk to the people who, you know, and about how they did it. You know, we are two fast growing small, medium-sized businesses you've got talking to us here. Tom and I both, as he said, have experience at larger companies, but there are larger companies in the community. So go and talk to them, would be my advice, because it is possible.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Next question from Pete. And again, this is the last question, so please do keep them flowing in. We've got around 5 minutes left to go. So Pete has asked if public sector organizations can become a B Corp.
Oh, it's a good question. I don't know the answer. John, do you know?
I don't. My initial reaction to seeing that in the chat was, I think you have to be a company, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
We don't know is the honest answer there, Pete. Sorry.
Sorry, Pete.
No worries at all. Okay, I've just Googled it and I can't find a simple answer, unfortunately. Okay, non-profits, large multinationals, governmental organisations and companies of all sectors and sizes can join the B Corps movement by using B Lab's impact. So it does look like it's a yes, to be fair. And I can just put the link to my source in the chat here. And we do have another question, thankfully. But Pete, have a look on that link. That should give you what you need. Okay, so from Jennifer, in terms of engaging with the B Corp community, how is the best way to engage with other organizations who are currently in the process of applying?
That's a good question, because I'm not sure how easy it is to know who is actually in the process of applying. I guess one thing you can see, there are some companies going through the process who might be early stage businesses who, like Jon's business, become what's called B Corp pending for a little while they're setting up, and then become a B Corp. But I don't think B Corp actually publish a list of organizations that are going through the process. So finding out who they are might be challenging. I think if you do find out there are other organizations going through the process, then we found in our journey, we did speak to other B Corps or people that had gone through the process just to learn and get some advice and get some answers to some of the questions that we've discussed today. And we found everyone super open to that. The B Corp community is a very open community and very supportive of each other. So we found it quite easy if you can identify who's going through it or has gone through it, to open up a conversation. And definitely, I'm always very happy to share more about what we've done and what's worked for us or hasn't worked for us. And Jon, I'm sure you could do the same. So I guess the offer is open if you need a bit of help as you're going through it, just to get in touch with myself or one of the team, and we can share our experience with you.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that there are a number of organizations that consult and advise on B Corp certification. And we certainly spoke to one of those. In the end, didn't actually do that much work with them, but we got a bit of advice. And as Thom said, the B Corp community is very open. I'm sure if you spoke to some of those people, you might be able to sort of plug into people who are in that sort of application stage, because obviously those folk are engaged at that part of the journey. But I think my advice there are lots of events that go on in the B Corp community. My advice would be just to jump into them, and you'll start talking to people who will be able to navigate you to those who are at that stage of the process.
Yeah. The other thing I think I experienced, which was relatively positive, was while we were going through the B Corp application process, we were pointed to an organization that is kind of relatively easy to join and part of the community of communities that do want to be a B Corp. And I'm trying to remember the name of them, but we joined them, and we've done a few things with them. And I think it's something like Business for Good as a community. And they are worth engaging in as well. It's not obviously not the same as B Corp in terms of the certification process and what's involved with it, but it's a community of like-minded businesses who are trying to do something good in society. So that I found that a positive experience engaging with them in the year and a half leading up to our B Corp certification. So I'll have a quick look and see if I can find the link, which I'll share in the chat for you, Jen.
Thank you, Thom. Thank you, Jon. And on that wonderfully positive note, I believe we have come to the end of the allotted time. If there are any more questions, I'm sure Thom and Jon wouldn't mind staying on for a couple of minutes. But thank you to everyone that's joined on this afternoon. We've got one more question here from Robin, but thank you. If you want to head off now, wonderful to have you with us. And it's been a very informative session for me, so I'm sure it has for all of you guys too. Sorry, Robin, I imagine you meant to put a smiley face in there rather than put your hand up, as it's gone now. But if you do have a question, please do stay on. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining. We should have follow-up email with links to both of our businesses if you want to find out more about either of us.
Great, thank you very much, everyone. And just on the last question, it was Better Business Act. So I've put the link in the chat for those who are interested in that. So do have a look, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Purpose Amplified was the name of the consulting individual that we used who helps companies become B Corps, a chap called Paul Coverdale, who's wonderful, just as a plug.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day. Jon, thanks for that very much for that. That was
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Tom.
a really good session, and
Yeah, great.
good engagement in the group, and yeah, really positive. So I
Indeed.
think we'll do a follow-up note to everyone, and obviously link back to Nous as well, so that people can find you. Also to the people that haven't joined the webinar. And I think it was Gura's plan to feature Nous at some point in our monthly newsletter as well. So I might just get him to engage with you on that, just to make sure we do the right content for that.
Yes, must do that. I should also say to you that my one of my electric cars goes back on Friday or tomorrow.